What's going on, guys? Danny here from Metal Couch, and 12 Days of Christmas continues with Day 7. Today we're going to be taking a listen to Griffin's debut album, Flight of the Griffin. Now, again, this is a lot like Skullfist from yesterday, where there's one song on here that's really good, and I've heard before from various fan-made metal compilations before, and we'll get to that. We'll talk about that track in a little bit. But Flight of the Griffin, released in 1985 and was put out, strangely enough, on Shrapnel Records, which, if you know anything about the history of Shrapnel Records, they're more of like a neoclassical kind of shred label. Like, they had people like Racer X, Jason Becker, Vinnie Moore, some good old 80s shred, and Griffin's a little bit more of a power metal, speed metal kind of act. And honestly, the power metal perspective from this album overwhelms the speed part, but going into the album itself, we open up with Hawk the Slayer. Now, it opens with spoken word, and it immediately tells you that this is a fantasy album. This is an album that is completely steeped within like a medieval mindset. Hawk the Slayer being, I guess, some sort of fictitious warrior that is coming in to start decimate the landscape, which leads us into the track that I'd heard the most off of this album, Heavy Metal Attack, and again is a highlight off the track. It's a 5-minute long song of just nothing but pure awesomeness. If somebody were to ask me what Griffin is, like what song defines them, I would give them this song, Heavy Metal Attack, much like Dark Quarterer from previous days, and with No False Metal from Skullfist from yesterday. Heavy Metal Attack is the song that helps define this album. Unfortunately, however, we get into filler tracks, which include Submission. There's nothing really to note here. The solos weren't exactly too impressive, and you get track 4, Creeper, which kind of drops the whole medieval aspect of the album temporarily and doesn't include a line about trying to creep into the girls' locker room to sneak a peek and get caught by the principal. What's the point of the song being called Creeper? Anyway, moving on. We get the title track, Flight of the Griffin, a 6-minute long, mostly slow song with a surprise guitar solo over halfway through that just didn't do it for me. It's just mediocre at best, and I really get what they were going for. They were trying to show kind of a bit of an epic feel, but at the same time showing restraint, which I know that kind of sounds like it doesn't mix at all, but it just didn't really work for me at all, but is quickly redeemed by the second side of this album, beginning with Fire in the Sky. Fire in the Sky, now, you've probably heard me talk about filler tracks over the past few days, and before I should talk about Fire in the Sky, I should probably define what I mean by a filler track. A filler track, to me, personally, is a track that doesn't have any significance to the overall product of the album. It is simply there to extend the runtime. Now, this can either be good or bad. It depends on really the song itself. But Fire in the Sky is a track that helps redeem the album and helps to maintain my attention to this particular album, because Flight of the Griffin, the title track, really didn't do that. I started to lose interest about halfway through that song, going like, man, this really isn't that good. But Fire in the Sky helped bring me back, leading into Hell Runneth Over, which has a very strange fade-in effect at the beginning of the song. Completely took me off guard. That effect just kind of seems unnecessary and out of place. And then the song also, as soon as it starts, it ends, leading right into Judgment Day, which these two songs together, even though they really should have been one big song, are a nice way to help close out the album until we get to Traveling in Time, which is pretty cheesy. The cheese is strong with this album closer. Again, it's just not... I wasn't feeling it. I get what they were going for, but for me, it was just not there. Overall, the production of this album is solid. No real complaints. Vocal style, a lot like Skullfist from yesterday, is high pitched, falsetto. You've heard this vocal style before many times, I assume, and it's typical power metal. Unless you're Michael Kiske, in that case, that's not really typical with the 4-octave range. This guy doesn't have a 4-octave range, but it's when you think of power metal, stereotypical power metal, these are the kind of vocals that I think of. I wouldn't say that they were anywhere near as impressive as, say, Skullfist from yesterday, but they get the job done. You can tell that he definitely put a lot of effort into his performance, and for that I commend him. This album averages out at having an 86% on Metal Archives, and I'm not going to be that generous with this album. If I were to give this album a grade out of 10, I would probably give it a 6.75. It has a lot of problems, mostly because of the material present. I feel like there wasn't enough here to create like a tour de force album. But when the album is good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. When it's cheesy. But then again, this is also power metal we're talking about, and there are very few power metal albums I've ever listened to which are just like, wow, this is flat out amazing. Griffin's Flight of the Griffin, it's an okay album. Only really listen to this if you're into power metal, I guess. Not that there's any problem with that particular genre. It's just that this album didn't quite hold my attention as it should have. So a 6.75 for me. Danny here from Metal Couch, signing out.